Do you have a particular process that helps you ideate the future strategic direction of the technology organization? Like, how how do you approach that? Like, are you creating like a specific regimented space? Are you doing like journal prompts? Like, what's your process there?
I write so many Google Docs. I mean, I got Google Docs to like come to Fox just so I could like use Google Docs. I mean, we were like a Microsoft shop. I was like, we need Google Docs here. Like, this is how I work. I find it so helpful to write. I just write so much all the time, and I'm always writing docs. And then I'm always supposed to comment in my docs. I'm refining. I think writing is so clarifying. So I really like to write. And then just in terms of how I spend my time, like I'm a big believer in like high low time, where I think it's important to be thinking strategically in my role. Like I need to be, putting together frameworks for, filtering if the team can like filter information. Like my example earlier of like by default technology is out, right? Like these are like the kinds of filters that I think really can be clarifying for teams to execute against. And then I'm really in the weeds on certain projects where I'm actually seeing like how does this framework actually work for this project in practice. I think middle management is like absolute death. So I like stay probably, and this is, I don't know, this might be a weakness of mine, but I just really hate superficially touching lots of things in the quest to make them each like 1% better. Like I think that's like a total waste of time. So personally, I write a lot, and I'm either writing like strategic, like here's what this company should be all about. Here's what I think the technical architecture should be. I'm doing this for like our blockchain stack right now. So such a big question, right? What chain are we working on? What wallets? What are the features, right? So like I'm writing a ton about like what is the future technical architecture for us that like meets what we need to do. And then I'm like literally writing technical specs basically for one project. And so I just do this like high low thing that works really well for me. I like, really like to be grounded in like actual application, and then I basically get comfortable that I don't know a ton of stuff like in the middle. Like I don't know exactly how like these 7 projects are going, but there's like some ways to check in, and occasionally they go off the rails, and that's like a weakness of this approach. But I still think it works for me.
For the low time, can you just give a little bit of commentary about what that looks like? Like when you're getting really in the weeds with the team, seeing how your framework is being implemented to get some feedback there. Is that
Yeah.
shadowing a meeting, or what does that look like?
Oh no, it means like I'm producing all the work product for it. So I mean, like right now, for example, I'm working on this new business within Fox around Web3, and I am personally developing the entire tokenomics strategy for one of our league, like sports league partners we're working with, and every piece of utility we're going to offer. I just put together yesterday our entire drop schedule for the next year. Like I'm like every time, it's like here's the exact price we're going to release it at. Here's like the utility that's going to be offered. Here's the mechanic we're going to do it for, and like I literally wrote all that. And so for feedback, but I did the first draft, right? So that to me, that's what I mean by being low. It's like you do the first draft. You're not just commenting on what other people are doing. You're not like, getting briefed and, contributing early to a project. It's like you are actually creating the work product for some project for the first time about what it's all about.
What's the benefit of doing that, comparing to being brave and have other people to take the lead and you provide feedback?
And I would say, I mean, for every project, obviously that would be completely impossible. I mean, some of it is uh, like my passion. Like I really am excited about this project. Like I think it can be like one of the most transformational Web3 projects out there. I have a vision for it, and I just want to like see this vision through, right? And I love the fact that I feel that way. Like it's super energizing to me, right? That I can have this vision, that I can actually make it real, that I'm going to meet this chairman of the league, the CEO of the business. And when I talk about it, it's like I wrote it all. So like I know it really well. So I find that personally quite energizing. There are other projects we're working on where I just like don't even feel that close of connection to for whatever reason. This project still need to be successful. And we also have like very talented people running it. And so I'm super psyched that those projects are running. I'm like, I totally trust that person to run that project. Like, come to me if you need help, but like by default, I support you. And so I think some of the advantages, like I personally find it energizing, and it gets me like, this is what we're all about. This is why we're here. right? Like, and so that's one piece of it. But it's also it caused me to, like, check certain assumptions that seemed like right in the abstract, but in practice, I'm like, actually, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. Like, this would be really dumb in practice. So some of it just like gut checks. And the final thing I'll say is I think some of it is, I think back to my time at Palantir, and I spent a long, 8 years at Palantir, and I did a ton of roles. But there was one period at Palantir where I was basically in this like clear middle management role, right? Where there were like a bunch of individual contributors who were running. I was essentially overseeing 12 projects. And my job was basically like, those 12 people, it was too many projects for me to be involved with any of them. Those 15 projects, maybe, huge projects, would report up to me. And then I would basically like report up to the next, like to the CEO. And I hated that job when it was that way. I love my time at Palantir. But half the time in these meetings, I'm like, okay, sounds good. I'm like, I just wasted their time briefing me. I guess, some of it's my management style. There's a lot of weaknesses to this approach. It's kind of risky, but I think it's kind of like high risk, high reward, maybe.
Yeah, one of the goals for this conversation, our conversations on podcast, is to offer different approach, different opinions. Like, you got to know it, and then you can choose.
Yeah, I don't recommend it for everyone. I think for a lot of people, it might not be right at all, but it works for me.